My husband left me to die in a crash, not realizing I'd survive, and that I'd discover his secret life with my sister. My name is Lisa, I'm 33, and last year, I learned that the people you trust the most can become your worst enemies. It happened on a rainy Thursday night. My husband, Anton, 35M, had been distant for months, his temper sharp, his patience thin. We were driving back from a dinner at his business partner's house, the silence between us heavier than the rain hammering against the windshield. I reached over, trying to bridge the growing gap. Anton, what's wrong? You've been acting strange for weeks. He gripped the wheel tighter, his jaw clenching. For a moment I thought he'd ignore me like he had so many times before, but then he let out a sharp breath, his knuckles white against the leather. You want to know what's wrong, Lisa? He snapped, his eyes never leaving the road. I'm tired. Tired of pretending everything's fine. Tired of this life. His words hit like a slap. I opened my mouth to respond, to defend myself, but the look in his eyes stopped me. There was something cold, something final that I hadn't seen before. What do you mean? I managed, my voice smaller than I intended, but instead of answering, he suddenly yanked the steering wheel hard to the right. The car lurched off the main road, tires screeching as we veered onto a dark, unpaved path cutting through a dense forest. Anton, what the hell are you doing? I yelled, gripping the sides of my seat, my heart racing. The headlights cut through the rain-soaked branches, casting twisted shadows that whipped past the windows like clawed hands. The car bounced over potholes, my seatbelt digging into my shoulder with each violent jolt. Stop! You're going to get us killed. He didn't even flinch. If anything, he pushed down harder on the gas. The speedometer crept past 60, then 70, then 80. Panic clawed at my chest. I reached for my phone, but it slipped from my shaking fingers, clattering to the floor by his feet. Anton, slow down. You're scaring me. For a brief second, he turned to me, his eyes dark, his expression unreadable. Then he whispered, almost to himself, "It's better this way." The road ahead curved sharply, the edge disappearing into a dense wall of trees. I felt the car begin to fishtail, the back end sliding out as the tires lost traction on the muddy ground. No, no, no. The impact hit like a hammer. The front of the car crumpled against a thick tree trunk, the windshield exploding into a million shards. My head snapped forward, pain exploding through my skull as the seatbelt cut into my ribs. For a long, disorienting moment, there was only darkness. When I opened my eyes, the world was sideways. Blood trickled down my face, pooling in my lap. I tried to move, to breathe, but every nerve felt like it was on fire. Through the shattered passenger window, I heard the groan of metal as Anton's door creaked open. I forced my head to turn, vision blurred, and saw his silhouette stagger out into the rain. He paused, one hand on the crumpled roof, and looked back at me. For a second I thought he might come back, that he'd reach in, pull me out, hold me. But then he stepped back. And another step. He looked around, scanned the empty, rain-soaked forest, then turned his back and stumbled away, his figure disappearing into the trees. He left me. He actually left me to die. I sat there, alone in the wreck, my body screaming in pain, the taste of blood thick in my mouth. I felt the cold seep in through the shattered glass, the rain soaking my clothes, chilling me to the bone. But my mind somehow cut through the fog of pain and fear, locking onto one sharp, clear thought. If I survive this, you're going to regret it, Anton. Waking up in a hospital bed was like surfacing from a nightmare only to find myself in another. The sterile white ceiling tiles, the faint beeping of monitors, the sharp smell of antiseptic. It all felt too harsh, too real. I blinked against the harsh fluorescent lights, my throat dry and tight. My body ached with every shallow breath, and my left arm was wrapped tightly in a cast. I tried to sit up, but a sharp stabbing pain in my ribs reminded me of the crash. The crash. Memories flooded back, jagged and disjointed. Anton's cold eyes. The rain. The screech of tires. The crunch of metal against the tree. Him walking away, leaving me to die. Mrs. Evans, you're awake. I turned my head slowly, wincing as the stitches on my forehead pulled against my skin. A nurse in blue scrubs stood at the foot of my bed, her face a mask of professional concern. How long have I been here? My voice came out in a ragged whisper, each word scraping against my raw throat. 3 days. You're lucky, you know. Someone found you just before the storm hit. Lucky. The word felt bitter on my tongue. I wasn't sure if I believed in luck anymore. Not after what Anton had done. Is my husband here? I forced the question out, half hoping, half dreading the answer. The nurse's face tightened slightly, her professional smile slipping for just a moment. No, ma'am. No one's been by. Of course not. I closed my eyes, the sharp sting of betrayal cutting deeper than the physical wounds. The next few days passed in a blur of painkillers, physical therapy, and hollow, empty hours spent staring at the TV without really seeing it. My phone had been destroyed in the crash and I had no way of reaching anyone. But as my strength returned, so did my resolve. The day I was finally able to walk again, I hobbled over to the small table beside my bed and picked up the hospital phone. My fingers shook as I dialed our home number, the one Anton and I had shared for years. It rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then his voice. Hello. For a second I couldn't speak. Just hearing him, so casual, so alive, made my pulse race with a mixture of rage and disbelief. I took a shaky breath. Anton. There was a long dead silence on the other end. I could almost picture him, frozen in place, his mind racing to figure out how this was possible. Lisa, he finally whispered, his voice tight. Is that you? Surprised. I forced the words out, each one sharp enough to cut. You left me, Anton. You left me to die. The silence stretched on, thick and suffocating. Then a faint, almost panicked laugh. Lisa, listen, it was a mistake. I thought you were gone. You walked away, I hissed, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. I saw you. You didn't even try to help me. I heard him exhale sharply, a desperate, ragged sound. Lisa, I can explain. No, my voice came out steadier this time, fueled by the simmering rage in my chest. You don't get to explain. Not anymore. Before he could respond, I slammed the phone back into the cradle, the harsh clatter echoing through the small room. I felt the hot prick of tears, but I forced them back. I had survived. And now I needed answers. When I was finally released from the hospital, I returned to a house that felt more like a stranger's than my own. Dust had settled over the countertops, the air stale and cold. Anton's car wasn't in the driveway, and the emptiness of the place felt like a confirmation of my worst fears. I stumbled up the stairs, clutching the railing for support, my mind a haze of painkillers and rage. I pushed open the door to our bedroom, half expecting to find him there, waiting, ready with excuses. But the room was empty. The bed neatly made. His side untouched. And that's when I saw it. A pair of heels. Hi, red, and definitely not mine. They sat beside the bed, their glossy surface catching the weak sunlight that filtered through the blinds. I felt my pulse quicken, my breath catching in my throat. I staggered back, gripping the doorframe for support, my mind racing to piece together the implications. Then I heard a voice. A familiar, soft laugh drifting up from the hallway. I turned, my heart pounding, and saw her. My sister. I froze, my heart hammering in my chest. The footsteps drew closer, each soft click of her heels against the hardwood floor echoing in my skull like the ticking of a bomb. My sister, Mia, stepped into the hallway, her perfectly manicured nails trailing along the wall, her head tilted as she hummed to herself. She hadn't seen me yet. It felt like the air had been sucked from the room. She stopped just outside my bedroom door, pulling her long, dark hair over one shoulder as she glanced at herself in the hallway mirror. Mia? My voice came out weak, barely more than a whisper, but it was enough. She turned, her eyes going wide as they locked onto mine. For a second, the shock on her face was so raw, so real, that I almost believed she had no idea what I was doing there. But then I saw it, the slight flicker of annoyance that passed over her features, quickly hidden behind a mask of concern. Lisa, she said, her voice breathy with forced surprise. Oh my God, you're alive? I felt my fingers dig into the doorframe, the pain a sharp reminder that this wasn't some twisted hallucination. Why are you here, Mia? I managed to choke out, each word scraping against my dry throat. She hesitated, her eyes darting to the stairs behind me, then back to my face. I came to check on Anton. He said you were. He said he hadn't heard from you in days. Liar. I felt my pulse quicken, my head spinning as the pieces started to fit together. The red heels. The familiar laugh. The way she had just walked into my house like she belonged here. I took a shaky step back, trying to process what I was seeing, what this meant. Why are your shoes in my bedroom? I whispered, my voice trembling with a mixture of shock and growing fury. She blinked, her mask slipping for just a fraction of a second, a flicker of something dark crossing her eyes before she forced a smile. Oh, those, she said, letting out a nervous little laugh. I must have left them here the last time I visited. You know how I'm always forgetting things. I felt my stomach churn. Visited. My voice grew stronger, anger slicing through the fog in my brain. Mia, I've been in the hospital for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. How long have you been visiting my husband? The hallway fell silent. The the only sound the distant hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen below. Mia's smile faltered, her eyes narrowing as she took a small defensive step back. Lisa, I think you're confused. You've been through a lot. Maybe you should sit down. I can call Anton and we can. No, I felt a surge of strength, my blood boiling beneath the bandages and bruises. No more lies, Mia. I want the truth. She swallowed, her perfect facade cracking, and for a brief satisfying moment, I saw fear flicker in her eyes. I took another step toward her, my fists clenching. Were you sleeping with my husband? Mia's lips parted, her breath coming in quick, shallow bursts. For the first time in our lives, she looked genuinely afraid of me. And that's when I heard it. The sound of footsteps coming up the stairs. Heavy. Familiar. Anton. I turned, my heart racing as he appeared at the top of the steps. His face a mix of shock and something darker. Something that twisted my stomach into a knot. Lisa, he said, his voice low and cautious, like he was trying to calm a wild animal. What are you doing here? I stared at him, my chest heaving, the room spinning around me. What am I doing here? What are you doing with my sister in our house? He glanced at Mia, his jaw tightening. A silent exchange passing between them that only confirmed my worst fears. I felt my hands begin to shake, a cold, numbing rage spreading through my veins. Mia, I said, my voice trembling. How long? She opened her mouth, closed it, then shot a desperate look at Anton. He took a slow step forward, his eyes never leaving mine. Lisa, let's talk about this. Calmly. You're not well. You just got out of the hospital. You need to rest. I let out a bitter, broken laugh, the sound echoing down the empty hallway. Don't you dare gaslight me. I snapped, my voice sharp enough to cut. I know what I saw. I know what you did. He hesitated, his eyes flicking to Mia, who took another step back, her hand nervously twisting the diamond ring on her finger, a ring I now realized I had never seen her wear before. The blood drained from my face. The ring. It was Anton's grandmother's. The one he had once told me he'd only ever give to the woman he truly loved. My stomach twisted, a fresh wave of nausea rolling over me. Oh my God. I whispered, my knees threatening to give out. You've been planning this. Anton took another step forward, his expression hardening. Lisa, you need to leave. And that's when I knew. I had to get out. Because whatever this was, whatever twisted betrayal I had stumbled into, it was far from over. I didn't say another word. Just turned around and walked out of the house. My mind was a swirling mess of pain, betrayal, and confusion. But I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't confront them yet. Not like this. Not without proof. As I stepped into the crisp morning air, I forced myself to take a deep breath. I needed to think clearly. Let them believe I was broken. Let them think I'd walk away without a fight. They had no idea what I was about to do. The first thing I did was find a quiet spot in a nearby park and sit down on a weathered wooden bench. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking, and searched for the nearest police station. If I was going to take them down, I needed evidence, not just accusations. Then a thought hit me. The accident. Someone had found me. Someone had called for help. I needed to find that person. They could be the key to proving that Anton left me to die. I called the hospital first, hoping they could give me some information. After being transferred 3 times, I finally spoke to a nurse who had been on shift when I was admitted. There was a man who called 911, she said, sounding uncertain. He didn't stay long. Just made sure you were stable before the paramedics arrived. I think his name was Dave? Or maybe Dan. Sorry, I can't be sure. But I remember him mentioning he worked at a gas station near the crash site. A gas station. That was the start. I thanked her and hung up, pulling up a map on my phone. There was only one gas station near the place where Anton had crashed the car. A small, rundown one on Route 12. I made my way there, my heart thumping. The cashier behind the counter, a guy in his 50s with a graying beard, looked up as I walked in. Excuse me, I began, forcing my voice to stay steady. A few weeks ago, there was a car crash on Route 12. A man called for help. Do you know anything about that? He squinted at me, then his face softened. You're the woman from the accident, he said slowly. Thought you looked familiar. Yeah, that was Carl. He found you. Works the night shift here. Relief washed over me. Do you know when he'll be back? Tonight. Around 9. He's usually outside by the pumps, smoking before his shift starts. I thanked him and left, my mind buzzing with possibilities. If Carl had seen Anton leave the scene, his testimony could change everything. For the rest of the day, I made preparations. I contacted a lawyer specializing in domestic abuse and criminal cases, explaining my situation briefly. I wanted to be ready once I had the evidence. That night, I returned to the gas station and found Carl leaning against the side of the building, a cigarette glowing between his fingers. "Carl." I approached cautiously, not wanting to startle him. He looked at me then nodded. "Yeah, that's me. I'm Lisa. You found me after the crash." His eyes softened. "Yeah, thought you were dead at first. Glad to see you're up and walking." I hesitated, trying to find the right words. "Did you see anyone else that night? A man leaving the scene?" Carl took a long drag on his cigarette, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, I saw him. He was limping, looked like he'd been hit too, but he didn't check on you. Just walked away into the woods. I thought it was strange. Usually people stick around, but he just left." My stomach twisted. "Would you be willing to give a statement to the police?" Carl hesitated, then dropped his cigarette and crushed it under his boot. "If it helps you, yeah, I'll do it." What he did? That's not right. My relief was so overwhelming I almost cried. I thanked him profusely and promised to be in touch. As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed. It was Anton. I let it go to voicemail. The next morning, I went to the police station with my lawyer and filed a report for attempted murder. Carl came through. His statement confirmed that Anton had left me at the crash site without calling for help. That was enough to open an investigation. Next, I focused on the financial side. I dug through bank statements, credit card bills, and found several large unexplained charges, all within the past month. I knew Anton and Mia had been planning something, but this made it clearer. I suspected they were draining our joint accounts to prepare for a life together without me. I printed everything, including screenshots of texts between Mia and Anton that I had managed to pull from my cloud backup. They hadn't bothered to delete their messages from my synced devices. How stupid could they be? Within a week, the police had enough to bring Anton in for questioning. When they showed up at the house, Mia was there too, her face going pale as they cuffed Anton and read him his rights. I watched from across the street, hidden behind a parked car, my heart pounding. He glanced around looking for me, but I stayed hidden. Mia tried to follow the officers, shouting that there must be a mistake, but they didn't even glance back. Later, when Mia called me, her voice desperate, pleading, I didn't answer. I knew what she wanted. Help. An ally. Someone to bail Anton out. But I wasn't that person anymore. Instead, I sat down in my new small apartment, my own space, and looked at the documents I'd gathered. I had filed for divorce, frozen the joint accounts, and blocked Mia and Anton on every platform. For the first time in years, I felt safe. I was still bruised, still aching from everything they'd done to me. But I was healing. Slowly. And one day I knew I'd be okay. The court date came faster than I expected. Sitting outside the courthouse in my freshly pressed blazer, I felt a mix of anxiety and grim satisfaction. I had been through hell, literally left for dead, but I was still standing. As I stepped into the cool, echoing halls of the courthouse, my lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Natalie, met me by the elevators. "Ready?" she asked, adjusting the thick stack of files in her arms. I took a deep breath. As I'll ever be. When we entered the courtroom, Anton was already there, sitting with his high-priced lawyer. He looked different, thinner, his sharp jawline now lined with tension. Mia sat behind him, her face pale, her fingers nervously twisting the hem of her blouse. She looked up as I walked in, our eyes locking for a brief, charged moment. I saw fear. I saw guilt. But mostly, I saw the realization that she had underestimated me. The first half of the trial was brutal. Anton's lawyer tried to paint me as a bitter, unstable wife, desperate for revenge. He claimed the crash was an accident, that Anton had panicked and fled in shock, not malice. But then Natalie brought out Carl. The courtroom fell silent as the gruff, unshaven gas station worker took the stand. He looked nervous at first, his eyes darting around the room, but when Natalie guided him through his testimony, his voice grew stronger. I saw him, Carl said, pointing directly at Anton. I saw him leave her there. Just walked away. Didn't even look back. Anton's jaw tightened, his lawyer shifting uncomfortably beside him. Next came the financial evidence. Natalie laid it out methodically, each piece clicking into place like a perfectly assembled puzzle. The unexplained withdrawals. The suspicious credit card charges. The hotel bookings in Mia's name. The two of them had clearly been planning to run off together, draining our accounts before disappearing for good. But the final blow came when Natalie played the voicemail I had recovered from my cloud backup, a message from Mia to Anton recorded just days before the crash. "We'll be free soon," Mia's voice crackled through the courtroom speakers, trembling with anticipation. "Just stick to the plan. She'll never see it coming." I heard a few gasps from the small audience in the gallery. Even Anton's lawyer paled. When it was Anton's turn to take the stand, his facade cracked. He stumbled over his words, his eyes flicking nervously between the judge, the jury, and me. He tried to spin a tale of a panicked, confused husband, but the evidence had already gutted his defense. By the end of the day, the verdict came in: guilty. Anton was convicted of attempted murder and financial fraud. As they led him away in handcuffs, his eyes locked onto mine, a mix of fury and disbelief twisting his features. I just stared back, my expression calm, my heart steady. Mia tried to approach me as I walked out of the courthouse. "Lisa, please," she whispered, her eyes red, her voice hoarse. I'm sorry." I stopped, my hand already on the door, and looked her dead in the eyes. "No," I said, my voice cold. "You're not. But one day you will be." I didn't wait for her response. I walked out into the bright afternoon sun, the cool air filling my lungs, my steps lighter than they had been in years. For the first time, I felt truly free. I rebuilt my life after that. Moved to a new city, got a new job, started fresh. I even adopted a scrappy little rescue dog I named Shadow, a fitting companion for someone who had once felt trapped in darkness. And as the weeks turned into months, the nightmares faded, the anger dulled, and the ache in my chest slowly healed. One morning, as I sat on my small balcony, a cup of hot coffee warming my hands, I realized something. They hadn't just left me for dead. They had set me free.